All right, so we're talking infighting within the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council. Now, just recently, a rivaling faction says that they will be hosting a conference that's very similar to the one that's coming up in June. So what is your assessment of the conflict, particularly regarding the emergence of that faction that I just mentioned a while ago?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure that all of this could have been avoided in the first place if there was dialogue between dissenting voices in the diaspora and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Unfortunately, there's a certain amount of arrogance in this, and I was a little bit surprised as I listened to the foreign minister on a radio program this morning referring to this group as a fringe group. I can assure you that will excite them even more to prove that they're not a fringe group. And the minister must understand that there are a lot of members of the diaspora who are not on board with the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council as it is structured and controlled.
Ambassador, what's the primary concern there from those critics?
Well, they had some issues that they wanted to discuss with the government. And I believe this goes back quite a ways. And they were not satisfied with the responses that they were getting. And in the last few months, I understand that they wrote to the minister, they wrote to the ambassador here in Washington, seeking to discuss these issues. Unfortunately, they either received no response or they were totally ignored or something like that. And then they started to take other types of action to get the attention of the government.
How do you perceive the potential impact of this conflict on Jamaica and its diaspora relations?
Well, my understanding, it is not two conferences. There's a Global Jamaica Diaspora Conference, which is sponsored by the government, and there is an assessment of that conference, which will take place in the evenings at the end of the business of the conference, so they're not conflicting as many people believe. My understanding is that the discussions that will follow the conference will be assessing what was discussed that day. I'm not sure how strictly that discussion will stick to the agenda of the day. I don't know. I only can tell you what I'm hearing from different voices. But it is not a parallel conference, and we should stop using that terminology. It is an assessment of the conference from a certain segment of the diaspora.
Thank you for that clarity, sir. So what then do you think the response of the government should be? Because you've accused the government of showing a bit of arrogance in the conversation. So from this point on, what should that engagement look like to get back to some sort of consensus?
Well, what has happened really is that there's no dialogue. They've been talking across each other. And the government is a big player in this dialogue and should be pushing for dialogue. I haven't seen that yet. So technically, this whole issue is on a slippery slope. And I'm not hearing from either side if there's an exit strategy to this confrontational approach. You know, it is the responsibility of the government to find ways to engage with the diaspora that are compatible with diaspora concerns as defined by the diaspora. I don't see that happening. You know, I, for one, who, as you are quite aware, published the Ward Post. And from the very inception of setting up of this new structure, the Global Jamaica Diaspora Council, I cautioned in my writings about the lack of in-depth consultations with members of the diaspora. And the minister maintains that they had consultations. Well, I had set out in one of my articles what real consultation would look like. And what occurred nowhere compares to what was needed and what was required to have members of the diaspora on board. So right now, if you look at the individuals who are representing, and I put that in parentheses, who are supposed to be representing the diaspora on this council, have no track record whatsoever in working with the diaspora community anywhere. The first time most of us who have been in this diaspora for years and working for years with diaspora organizations and individuals have never heard of them. The first time we heard of them was when they're running for election to the council. So if you go back and look at the level of voting which occurred after months of preparation, registration, etc., the amount of diaspora members that voted made this thing a joke. They do not represent the diaspora. The prevailing view across the diaspora is that they represent the government. And if that wasn't the case, you wouldn't see this group spring up and their views and position having any traction in the diaspora if the council was properly established and structured and representative of the diaspora.
Ambassador, thank you very much. I don't want to hold you any longer, but just to close, any other insights you'd like to give before I let you go?
Well, I think that both sides need to seek dialogue to settle the differences. There needs to be some accommodation on both sides. And there are members of the diaspora with lots of experience who would be willing to help with that dialogue, to participate, to make it happen and to make it work. But both sides have to reach out to those veteran members of the diaspora. And I wouldn't rule myself in and I wouldn't rule myself out.
I was about to ask.
As being part of that dialogue. You know, I always respond to duty when I'm called upon to do so. And this is an instance where we need some steady heads, people who don't have an axe to grind one way or the other, people who are basically observers of what is going on right now.